We're back with Wayne Weber from Heckler and Co. And during the last segment, you mentioned something that I didn't even realize, as much as an HK fanboy as I like to claim myself to be. I didn't know that the G3 was you guys' first production rifle.
It is. The HK was awarded the German Bundeswehr, the German Army rifle contract in 1959. That's when the G3 rifle went into production for the German Army.
And what's sad about that is I actually have a picture, like this photograph of an individual holding a G3 in my house.
I saw that.
Yeah, and I didn't even know that it dated that far back. That's incredible. So there's a pretty lengthy history behind HK that I'm sure a lot of people don't know about.
Absolutely.
Anything in particular that you think that some things that people wouldn't quite see coming from HK?
Well, a lot of people simply don't know the history of HK. HK, they simply know HK nowadays as a premier firearms manufacturer. When HK began, is about as far away from that as you could get. We started the company in 1949. It's when we were founded by 3 former Mauser engineers. And we started out by producing sewing machine parts, bicycle parts, and precision tools and gauges. Nothing that went into a firearm.
That's just beautiful in my mind. It's just kind of like imagining, what I mean. In many ways, it's kind of synonymous. I wouldn't say synonymous to the story of Glock, but it's just interesting knowing that the backstory for a lot of these companies have nothing to do with what they're doing now.
Sure.
But then nonetheless, kind of makes sense when you actually sit down and think about it. Especially what goes into the machining components of building a firearm, so forth and so on.
Exactly.
Now, one of my favorite guns that you guys produce is the HK USP. I think there's something about the lines on that gun, and just the kind of, when I say over-engineered and overbuilt, for me, that's an incredibly good thing. I think sometimes it has a negative connotation to it, but I love how over-engineered it is. I think it is one of my favorite pistol platforms, and I find myself just buying random ones that I see. One of the ones I don't own are the Expert and Elite. And I think we talked about this off air. You were saying that they're actually starting to come back out now. Is that something you guys are still producing?
We've actually made limited production runs of the USP Elites in all 3 calibers, and in the USP Experts in all 3 calibers. Like you said, the term over engineering. When you think about the USP, and when we introduced that in 1993, you look at it nowadays and you think, well, that's kind of a outdated design. You look at the accessory rail, but as far as I know, we were the first company to do that.
Yeah.
And that can bite you, the other way sometimes, because we were the first. It's become standard, but it's not that particular dimension, that rail.
It's funny because I was guilty of doing that. I remember one of the biggest complaints I had about the USP was the accessory rail, and I'm like, why is this proprietary? This is ridiculous. As much as I love HK, I do a lot of slandering of you guys too. But somebody had to check me, and they were like, and I think it was an article I read, and I realized this because you guys were one of the first to do it. And then it became standardized. And so, I mean, you guys are not going to go and retrofit the accessory rail on the gun. And then now with all the accessories you can, now you have adapters and stuff that you can add to it to make it work the way you want. But I do feel like the USP is one of those classic designs. I personally think it's aged pretty well.
Absolutely.
Some people may look at it and think it looks a little bit, I personally think it looks just as modern as it did when it first came out.
Sure.
Now, go ahead.
But one thing a lot of people don't realize is, they look at the VP9, but our first VP pistol was a very revolutionary design. The VP70, back in the early '60s, first polymer frame, striker-fired double action pistol.
And a lot of people like to give that credit to the Glock, and it's not true. I actually saw a VP70 at a local gun store in Houston. And I thought about buying it, and in many ways, it kind of almost looks, and I know you're going to hate me for this, it kind of looks like a High Point.
Oh my goodness!
It does.
Ouch!
But
ouch!
you know what? The interesting thing about it wasn't selling for high point prices. And so, and for me, I looked at it as something a bit of as a collector's item. I didn't buy it. I really wish I did. For somebody who does appreciate HK the way I do, it's gonna mean more to me than probably somebody else. But it's interesting how a lot of people don't know that. People think that Glock is the first company to come out with a polymer handgun. In reality, it was you guys.
Sure.
Yeah. And so I want to talk about the HK MR556, or as some other people know it, the 416. The 416 is you guys' AR-15. And what's interesting is it took me a while to realize that you guys didn't build an AR-15, so to speak. You guys had a ton of rifles chambered in 5.56 and a bunch of various other rounds, but you guys didn't have a AR pattern style rifle until you guys came out with the 416. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And so what was the motivation behind that? What drove that?
Special forces.
Okay.
We actually were approached by a U.S. government agency that asked us, "Can you make your competitor's gun better?" And we took the gun and we looked at it, all of the different features of it, and we modified it for the customer as they requested, and they fell in love with the design, and that's what became the 416. And we basically took, if you look at the inner workings of it, we essentially took a G36 operating system and put it in an M4 AR-15 style rifle.
Now, got you. Now, the thing about, so with the G36, I've shot the G36. I've shot in the full auto version of G36, and I've shot in the full auto version of 416. Well, the 416 is the full auto version. And the G36 has a very distinctive recoil. It's like shooting a sewing machine, whereas the 416 is like shooting a power drill. there is no succession between each shot. It just feels like it's just one long string of fire, and it's incredibly flat at the same time. What do you think makes up the dip? Do you think it's the housing that the actual internal components are in, or was it deliberate to kind of change up the speed between the G36 versus the 416?
I don't think anything was deliberate. I think so much of it just depends on the shape and the balance of that gun, because most people, when they pick up a G36, because the gun is so light, the first thought is this probably has a good bit of kick to it.
Gotcha.
But it's just the opposite. Like you said, it shoots so smooth and it feels like a sewing machine. Yeah. It's a very, very comfortable and fun gun to shoot.
Yeah, I was always largely drawn to the aesthetic appeal of the G36 for whatever reason. I still do. It's one of the few guns that I look at and I don't want to put an optic on it. Large part of that is because the bore of a height starts to get ridiculous after a certain point. But aesthetically, I loved it. And then when I shot it, I just became enamored with it, because you're right. It's one of the most controllable, fully automatic guns that I've ever shot. Until I shot the 416, which is amazing to me because it shoots so fast. It's just a fast shooting gun. How did you do that?
Well, I think it may be a matter of perception, because the rate of fire on a with standard 62 grain ammunition is about 750 rounds per minute, which is what most the theoretical rate of fire in full auto, of course. That's about the same rate of fire as an M4 or an M16.
It feels so much faster in my hands, even down to the MR556. And I've said this before, and I think in the video, shooting the semi-auto version, I shoot it a lot faster than I do some other AR-15s. And we're not even talking about, I didn't even have a tricked out Geissele trigger in there or anything like that. When I put that in there, it was just game over. But I don't know why, but for me, it's just something that felt like, it feels like such a faster gun to shoot than other AR-15s. But I guess it may be a placebo effect. I don't know.
It may depend on the type of ammunition. Certainly, ammunition that's a little bit hotter is going to give the perception of a little more recoil and a faster rate of fire.
Gotcha. Unfortunately, I just looked at the clock and realized we're out of time, because Lord knows I can do this all day long. So we're gonna call this part 1, and just be sure to be here when we do part 2.
Count on it.
Absolutely.
Always.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure, man.
Likewise.
Absolutely.
Enjoy your evening.
Absolutely, will do. All right, folks, that's it for another episode of Seeing Live. And be sure to join us next week. And also, remember, we'll be filming Seeing Live at SHOT Show this year.